At a family gathering, my husband said he'd sold my jewelry, gifts from my late mother, to pay off his sister's debt. His sister smiled and said they looked cheap anyway. I held my tears until I could leave. 3 days later, she got a letter from an investigator saying, "I want to start by saying this. I trusted Brian. We've been married for 12 years. We met in our early 30s, both coming out of long-term relationships, both wanting something solid. At least I thought we were on the same page. We bought a small home outside Boise. Nothing fancy, but I made it feel like home. I hung up photos of my parents, planted tulips like my mom used to, even kept her old china in the dining hutch. Brian never cared much for sentimental things. I thought that was just his way. My mother passed in 2021. It was sudden. One morning she just collapsed in the bathroom and never woke up.
Stroke.
I flew down to Sacramento for the funeral and came back with a shoebox full of jewelry, rings, necklaces, old pins. None of it was fancy, nothing flashy, but it was all hers. I kept that box in our home safe. I'd open it sometimes just to smell that faint rose perfume still clinging to the fabric pouch she kept them in. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd smile. But they were mine. My memories. My mother. Now let me tell you about Tessa, Brian's younger sister. She's always been a problem. Borrowed money she never paid back. Showed up uninvited. Got evicted twice and lived with us for a month each time. Once she stole our spare key and let herself in while we were on vacation, said she just needed a place to crash. That's the kind of person she is. Still, Brian defended her. Every time. She's just going through something. She'll get it together. But she never did. That Saturday at the barbecue, it wasn't even supposed to be a big deal. Just family, food, drinks. I made potato salad. Brian grilled. Tessa brought her latest boyfriend, some guy named Cole, who looked like he lived in a gym and talked like he failed high school English 3 times. She was loud and half-drunk before the sun even set. We were sitting around the fire pit. I still remember the way the light flickered across the table when Brian leaned in close and said, "I took care of Tessa's debt." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He said it like it was nothing. "I sold the jewelry from your mom. Got a decent amount for it. Paid off her card before the interest got worse." I didn't understand at first. I just stared at him. "You what?" He took a bite of his burger. "That stuff was just sitting there, babe. You never wear it." I opened my mouth, but before I could even form a word, Tessa jumped in from across the table. "Honestly," she laughed, "they looked cheap anyway." I wish I could say I stood up and screamed. I didn't. I just froze. My skin burned. I felt my eyes sting. But I didn't let the tears come. Not in front of them. I walked to the front yard, climbed into my car, and sat there in silence. 20 minutes passed. I didn't drive. I didn't call anyone. I just stared at the dashboard, trying to breathe. That night, Brian came home drunk and passed out on the couch. I stood over him and whispered, "You sold my mother." The next day, I checked the safe. Empty. Every piece was gone. The locket I clutched during Mom's funeral. The charm bracelet she wore when I graduated high school. Even the pin from her first job at the bank. All of it sold off like trash. I didn't fight him.
I didn't yell.
I started making calls. I reached out to Amy, an old friend from college. She used to live in Seattle, now works in private investigations out of Spokane. I trusted her. Told her everything. She agreed to look into it quietly. 3 days later, Tessa got a letter. She didn't tell me directly. I found out through Facebook. She posted something passive-aggressive. Funny how people act like victims when they're just bitter snakes. Classic Tessa. But Brian knew. He came into the kitchen that night looking pale. Did you send someone after Tessa?" I just stirred my tea. "You said the jewelry was yours to sell, right? Shouldn't be a problem then." He didn't answer. He just walked away. But that was only the beginning. I wasn't just going to let it go. Not after what he did. Not after what she said. They took something sacred from me. Now I was going to take something from them. And I wasn't going to stop until they both felt it. After that letter went out, the cracks started showing fast. Brian kept getting calls he wouldn't take in front of me. He started sleeping in the guest room, claiming he was just tired or needed space to think. He stopped grilling, stopped joking around. The house got quiet. Tessa didn't come around anymore, not that I missed her. One night, I looked through our shared bank account. That's when I saw it. Months earlier, Brian had pulled out nearly $6,000 in 2 separate withdrawals. The dates matched the week I was visiting my cousin in Denver. He'd waited until I was gone. Not only did he sell the jewelry, but he also drained our savings to clean up Tessa's mess. I confronted him that night. Did you really think I would notice $6,000 missing? He didn't even try to deny it. He just stood there, arms crossed, looking at the floor. She was in trouble. And what about me? I said. What about what you took from me? You never wore that stuff. It was just sitting there. I didn't think. No, you didn't. You didn't think. Because if you had, you'd know that was all I had left of my mother. He didn't say anything. He just walked out, got in his truck, and drove off. He was gone for 3 days. No call. No text. When he finally came back, he looked worn out and angry, like he was the one who'd been wronged. Meanwhile, Amy kept digging. She found out Tessa wasn't just in credit card debt. She was under investigation for welfare fraud. She'd been claiming benefits under a fake address while living rent-free at a guy's apartment. Brian knew. He knew. That's why he sold my things quietly. If I'd known the truth, I never would have agreed to help her. Amy also traced the jewelry sale. Turns out Brian sold it to a local pawn shop, who then sold it to a reseller in Portland. Most of it was gone. Melted down. The rest was split into parts. I broke down when I read the report. I imagined my mom's locket, her wedding ring, being pulled apart and turned into scraps for someone else's necklace.
Gone.
All because of them. But the worst came when I spoke to our mortgage lender. We were behind. I didn't know. Brian had been handling those payments for the last 6 months, and apparently, he'd been skipping them to help Tessa with her legal fees. He didn't tell me any of it. I could have lost the house, my home, because of his lies. I filed a police report, not to press charges yet, but to get an official record. I needed that paper trail. Amy helped me write it up, and we sent a copy to a civil attorney who specialized in family disputes and stolen property. She told me I had a strong case for marital misappropriation. That same week, I served Brian with legal paperwork. He flipped. Said I was blowing things out of proportion. Said I was destroying our marriage over a few old trinkets. I told him, you already destroyed it. You just didn't care enough to notice. Tessa called me screaming. Said I was trying to ruin her life. I didn't even raise my voice. I just said, you smiled when he told you. You laughed. Now I'm the one laughing. I didn't stop there. I sent letters to everyone. Brian's parents, Tessa's ex-boyfriends, her probation officer, and even her old employer she was still listing as a reference. I let everyone know what they'd done.
Not just the theft.
The lying, the fraud, the manipulation. It was slow, but things started unraveling for both of them. A week after I served the legal papers, Brian filed for separation. He said he couldn't live with someone so vengeful. I didn't argue. I just asked for one thing in return: full control of the house. He hesitated, but I think he thought the legal mess with Tessa would blow over faster if he cooperated. He signed over his interest in the house as part of our separation agreement, not realizing that I was already preparing to file for divorce. But here's where things really turned. Amy called me one morning. You're not going to believe this, she said. The pawn shop guy flipped. Said Brian sold him not just your jewelry, but some pieces that might have been stolen from someone else. That's when I remembered something. An old neighbor of Tessa's had posted on Facebook last year about missing family heirlooms after Tessa crashed at her place. At the time, no one took it seriously. But now, it looked a lot like a pattern. Amy helped connect the dots. We passed the info to the police. Then came the second letter. This one didn't go to Tessa. It went to her probation officer. It included everything. The welfare fraud, the suspicious jewelry sales, the fraudulent reference letters. I didn't send it. Amy did, under her firm's name, with supporting documentation. A month later, Tessa was arrested for violation of probation and ongoing fraud investigation. I watched the news clip twice. She looked stunned, like the world had turned upside down. Her mugshot was everywhere for a few days, shared across local forums, and even picked up by a regional crime report blog. Brian tried to visit her in jail. She refused to see him. By then, our divorce was moving forward. He tried to fight it once he realized I wasn't backing down. Tried to say he had rights to the house again. But the separation agreement was legally binding, and he'd signed it without legal counsel, thinking I wouldn't follow through. The judge sided with me. He left the courtroom red-faced and didn't say a word. A week later, I found out he moved into a rental outside Nampa with a roommate 15 years younger than him. From what I hear, he's broke, drinking more, and struggling to find stable work. Word travels fast in Boise, especially when you've burned every bridge in your own family. But the final twist came unexpectedly. One morning, I got a call from a woman named Carla. She worked for a small antique shop in Portland. She said, "We think we might have something that belongs to you." Turns out, she'd bought a small velvet box from a reseller who bought in bulk from the same pawn distributor Amy had traced. Inside was my mother's broken locket. It wasn't worth much, probably $10 in scrap. But when Carla described it, silver with a tiny crack at the hinge, I knew it was hers. She mailed it back to me, no charge. When I held it again, I broke down for the first time in weeks. Tessa being arrested didn't fix anything between Brian and me. If anything, it made things uglier. His pride was shattered. His sister, his excuse for everything, was finally out of reach, and now he had nothing to hide behind. He started blaming me to anyone who would listen. Told mutual friends I set Tessa up, that I'd always hated his family, that I was a cold-hearted bitch who wanted to ruin his life. Some of them believed him, at least at first. I could tell by the sudden drop in texts, the way some people stopped liking my posts online. That hurt, but I didn't chase them down to explain myself. I let the truth come out on its own. And it did. Amy sent me court transcripts from Tessa's first hearing. She pled not guilty, but under pressure, she admitted to borrowing jewelry from multiple people and acknowledged that Brian helped her pawn it. That was enough to kick off a deeper investigation. Brian got a call from a detective. I wasn't there, but he left a message on our landline, and I heard it later. "We're looking into multiple transactions involving jewelry linked to ongoing theft reports. Please call us back." Brian called me that night. "What the hell did you do?" I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't do anything."
You did.
"You just didn't think anyone would come looking." He cursed and hung up. I haven't heard from him since. But he wasn't done causing damage. I found out he'd been trying to cash out our joint retirement account. He'd already drained most of it, over $14,000. Before I caught the alert, I called the financial company and froze the remaining funds. I told the divorce attorney. That move added another layer to our case: financial misconduct during separation. I couldn't believe how far he was willing to go just to hurt me on his way out. But what he didn't know is that I had already started taking steps to rebuild what he thought he'd destroyed. With Amy's help, I'd been gathering written statements from people Tessa had wronged. Former roommates, coworkers, even the neighbors she'd stolen from. They all had stories. They were willing to talk. And all of it was getting compiled into a formal victim impact brief for the prosecutor. One night, I sat down and wrote my own. I told them what it meant to lose my mother's things. Not just as items, but as symbols. As pieces of her memory I could never get back. I told them what it did to me, how it changed the way I looked at the man I once loved. How it made me question every word he ever said to me. Every time he made me feel like I was too emotional, too attached, too sensitive. I wrote all of it. I didn't cry when I wrote it. I cried when I sealed the envelope. By now, the whole story was spreading. People at Brian's old job knew. One of his old bosses, a woman I always got along with, sent me a short message. He always took more than he gave. We're all just sorry it took this long to see it. There was one final move I had to make before it all came to a head. Amy handed me a document, a formal complaint I could file with the state bar against Brian's cousin, who notarized one of the sale receipts of the jewelry without verifying ownership. She wasn't just bending the rules, she was breaking the law. That cousin had vouched for Brian, probably thinking it was harmless. I filed the complaint. She lost her notary license within 2 weeks. They took something sacred from me. Now I was taking everything fake, fragile, and dishonest from them, piece by piece. The court date came 6 months after everything started. Tessa stood there in a gray jail uniform, thinner than I'd ever seen her. Her hair, once bleached and styled, was dull and pulled back. She barely looked at me. The prosecutor read the charges: welfare fraud, possession of stolen property, violation of probation. 3 counts.
Tessa pled no contest.
She didn't even try to fight it anymore. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in county jail, followed by probation and mandatory restitution to victims, including me. She was ordered to pay $4,200 directly to me as part of the settlement. I'll probably never see all of it, but the number isn't what mattered. What mattered was that it was public, that it was official, that her name, her fraud, her theft, her choices were now written down in court records forever. Brian showed up for the hearing but sat in the back.
He didn't speak.
When Tessa was taken out in cuffs, she looked back once, not at him, at me. Her face was empty. Outside the courthouse, I didn't speak to Brian. I didn't need to. But I didn't forget about him. The divorce finalized 1 month later. I kept the house. I kept my name. I kept every document, every record. My lawyer filed a lien for the $14,000 he took from our joint account. He tried to fight it, but he had no leg to stand on. The court ordered garnishment. 25% of his wages, if and when he finds stable work. I sold the car he left behind, paid off the rest of my mortgage with the money I got from it, and some help from an inheritance check that came through just in time from a great aunt on my mother's side. It felt like a sign. In the spring, I replaced the flower beds, took out the old tulips, planted wild roses. Then I did something I didn't plan on. I took the broken locket that had made its way back to me. The only piece of my mother's jewelry I ever saw again, and I had it repaired. I found a local silversmith, explained what it meant to me, and he carefully rebuilt the hinge, polished the surface, and added a tiny clasp so I could wear it again. I wear it every Sunday now.
People ask about it.
I just say it belonged to someone who taught me how to be strong. One last thing. That old Facebook post Tessa made, the one where she called me a snake? I printed it out, framed it. It sits on a shelf in my home office now, right next to the court documents and a photo of me and my mom, laughing at her last birthday. I don't forget, but I'm done grieving. I took back what they tried to erase. And I made sure they never forget what it cost them. Because revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes, it's just final.